Welcome to the next absolutely incredible episode of a Silver Lined Relaunch. And today I am thrilled to have an amazing woman with me, Shana Francesca. And she is somebody that is a professional life designer. She's a speaker and a writer. And from an early age, she's been absolutely fascinated by the power of intention, the way we speak and design our life into existence, and the way our physical surroundings reflect our understanding of how powerful we really are. 15 years into her career and 5 years into founding her firm, Consonate, she continues to lean into what it means to be a leader. Her purpose is to empower us all to live more intentional, connected, and on authentic lives, to design our lives, and doing so, experienced untold depths of joy. How awesome is that? Design our lives. This episode is brought to you by the Fired Up Entrepreneur Program. And this is a program that we are so proud of. The results have been downright remarkable, and we want to invite you to get a glimpse of what it is like inside this program by inviting you to participate in the Business Boot Camp, which is a 5-day free event, and get involved with this, because the pearls that we're going to be sharing each and every day are going to be the foundation for allowing you to make money, keep the money, grow the money, and strengthen not only your business, but also yourself. So please take advantage of this and join us at our next boot camp. You're listening to the Silver Lined Relaunch, and I'm your host, Hilary DeCesar, award-winning entrepreneur and transitional coach. Each week, I'll invite you to tune into inspirational stories, revealing how you too can turn ordinary experiences into the extraordinary. Feeling stuck? I'll share step-by-step strategies to fuel your ability to experience a life where silver linings are both abundant and possible. Shana, this is so good to have you. Thank you.
Good to be here, Hilary.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So the way I always like to begin is I like to open it up so that the people listening, people that have potentially been following you, that have been following the relaunch journey, can hear more about you from that point where we're talking about a significant relaunch. We're talking about the impact it's had on you and where you are today. We're going to give the tips and everything, but then also it's so important to have that understanding that many of us, even through the trials and tribulations, the massive relaunches, we can still pull out those silver linings. So would love to hear your most impactful relaunch story.
I feel like my whole life is a relaunch.
Well, that is very true. I agree. It's a series.
My whole life is a relaunch in so many ways. So there's been two major times that I relaunched my life, and they kind of played into each other. Is that I was born into a really difficult family. I was a first child to my parents, and they were very, very young, and it was very traumatic. My childhood and my upbringing, very abusive. And so really my first relaunch happened in my mid-20s, which set me up for the major relaunch in my life, which was
Can we go back to when you say difficult? Can we talk a little bit about what that?
We can. I sometimes breeze past because I'm not sure how much TMI people want. So I appreciate you asking.
Well, and if we're really going to get here and we're really going to help people, we need to kind of, you need to open it up and say, hey, this is really what happened.
Yeah.
because there are people
Yeah.
listening that are going to connect and say, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Um, when I say difficult, what I mean is at times horrifying. So my first memory is of sexual trauma, of being raped at 3 years old, by my babysitter's son. Um, his father's an alcoholic. His home life was no better than mine. He was 9 at the time. He was 9. Um, and for me, for your first memory to be that traumatic and to know, because a child doesn't attract negativity into their life, right? It's attracted by the people that are raising them, right? So there was trauma invited into my life because my parents were themselves kind of really broken people, right? I hate that. I hate to say it that way, but they had no tools to process their own trauma and their own difficulties in their own lives. And so they invited it into mine. My father was abusive. He was an alcoholic. He abused drugs until I was like 4 or something. And then around that time, my parents joined the church. I grew up evangelical Christian, which was for me in itself its own trauma. Um, Unfortunately, I did not feel supported and loved in the way that I felt that I should be by a church. Um, and then at the age of 15, like I'm skipping so much, but I can't tell you my whole life because this is like a book. At 15, my father sexually molested me. Unfortunately, I got away. Um, what makes it even more difficult is my father is a licensed minister. um,
Oh,
and a volunteer at the church that we went to. And I didn't tell anybody for 3 years because my father said if I told anyone that I would be responsible for my parents' marriage breaking up. And if you've grown up evangelical Christian, you understand that that is like divorce is like going to hell, basically. And so I just dealt with it myself at 15, and I felt like I could, which is just preposterous. Um, when I told my mother 3 years later, we then went and told the church, and my mother made the choice not to leave my father. She had tried to leave him. She had left him many times before, but had received no support from her own parents, her own family. She had kind of overworn her welcome in that area with her friends. And so she had no one to turn to be able to leave. And she had always been the breadwinner. So she was going to have to pay him mass amounts of alimony. And she just didn't feel like financially that she could do that and support her children. And so basically she asked me, not out loud, but she asked me to continue just shouldering it, you know?
shame.
Um,
I mean, you look at the childhood trauma that you have had, and thank you for being so open with it and so
yeah,
vulnerable. And, I sit here and I'm like, just so much that came out. And you said there was an innocence of a child, and there's the innocence of you and having that experience when you were 3, and then having other experiences along the way in your journey. And I've heard of some of those that you've had up till 15 when that happened.
yeah,
You sit here in front of us, and
mm,
for those that are watching on the video or just listening, you're such a beautiful soul. You're so, I
thank you.
mean, inside, outside. If you haven't seen her, she's magnificent. But
Thank you.
you have been able to get through these experiences. And as you say, you've had to really take them on yourselves. You've tried to you tried to reach out for help, and help wasn't there for you.
Yeah.
Can you share with us how did you even go about? I mean, I talk often about closing the doors,
Yeah.
putting up walls. What
Yeah.
what did you do?
Oh, that's such a good question. I realized that the people around me didn't have the tools, and I was going to have to find the tools, and I didn't know how, right? And I was going to have to protect myself while also growing into who I knew I was meant to be, right? Because I decided from a very early age that even though I didn't have much choice in the things that were happening to me, that I was not going to allow them to continue, right? I wasn't going to allow my life to look like that. And so whether or not God was giving me a purpose in my life, I was assigning one to myself, and it was going to be to make something beautiful of my life and to be able to share with other people how to make something beautiful out of their life as well. And so back in the day, we used to get, you remember JC Penney catalogs? Who remembers
Of
those?
course. Of
The
course.
big old thick JC Penney catalogs became my version of a vision board, right? I would take those, and they would come once a quarter. Remember that? Every season, summer, winter, spring, fall. You'd wait for the JC Penney catalog, and it had everything in it. And so I would just circle the things that I wanted to exist in my new life, right? I was creating my new life, and I would dog
You're
ear the
creating your new
pages.
identity.
Yes, I would dog ear the pages of
Right.
of all the places I circled. I dog ear those pages so I could flip through on a regular basis and just look and see it at what life I was creating for myself, right? Like what I had to look forward to in the future. And then I started collecting. Back then we also had, like, real calendars, like physical calendars, and I would, the
With
inspirational
great
quotes,
pictures.
amazing pictures of like fall foliage, always
Right.
fall foliage. And I would collect those, and I would tear off the ones that had beautiful inspirational quotes from, like, Eleanor Roosevelt and all these beautiful, amazing people, right? And one of my favorites was, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And so I decided to stop consenting to letting people make me feel inferior, right? And
That is one of my favorite quotes as
thank
well, and
you.
I had written it down on
Yeah,
I always write notes before I start
yeah,
talking to people, and I
yeah,
love that.
yeah,
Thank you for bringing that
yeah,
one up. Yeah, that one's
yeah.
awesome.
And 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 just surrounded my walls. I pasted all my walls on index cards, all of these beautiful quotes as I would read. And I love C.S. Lewis and his nonfiction work, right? And so, and in some of his works, his book The Four Loves and a couple of others, he puts quotes from all these different people at the beginning of each chapter. And so I would read those quotes, and the ones that came out, popped out to me from, like, Aristotle and all these beautiful authors, I would write them all over the place and surround myself with them. And they became my guiding light, like, there's this, if anyone has read Tribal Leadership, there's something that the authors talk about, is like, that change happens in language. And what I started to realize was that my dad had this favorite saying, life sucks and then you deal with it. But what I started to realize is that life doesn't suck. My life sucks. Right. And there's a really powerful understanding in that delineation. Right. Because if life sucks, it's pervasive. Everyone is experiencing that, and there's no escape. But when you recognize that it's my life that sucks, you recognize that there's a way out of that. There's a way to change that. There's a power
That
in the choice.
I call that the relaunch flip. It's
Right.
flipping
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
could be
Yeah.
perceived as this is the only way to wait a second. There is another way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that your dad would be talking about life sucks and, all of this.
Well, he was the reason life sucked.
Yeah. And because,
Yeah.
but you were not willing
Yeah.
to have his story become your story.
Right. 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 Exactly. And I knew that I had to find mentors, and those mentors became books, right? Because I didn't have access to people, but I did have access to books, and I could go to the library or whatever, back then you went to the library or buy
Right.
secondhand books or whatever it
Right.
is, and just collect all these beautiful, and I loved poetry and all this beautiful, impactful language. Robert Frost is one of my favorite poets, and his poem Birches just has, like, saved my soul so many times. Like, all of these things, feeling such beautiful and deep things. I knew that there were, especially with poetry, I knew there were other people who had started out their life the way that my life started, like Oprah and Maya Angelou, and all these amazing, powerful people have had a really difficult start to their life, that they really it's not beautiful and it's not glorious, but they made something glorious of their life. They decided the end of their story. They decided the story they wanted their life to tell. And they've designed their own lives, right? And so through my journey, I started to recognize that when really difficult moments would happen in our home life, I would reorganize my furniture.
That's so great.
And now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, there was just this powerful connection for me between physical space and what had happened in that environment. And it was like I needed to break my association with what was, so that I could reset the stage for what I wanted to be, right? And I needed to create the stage from which I wanted to tell my story my way. And then that's what led me to become an interior designer. And then the
Which is
fusion. Yeah.
so impactful that you just said that. I just glossed over
Yeah.
so much amazingness.
Okay.
The
Let's go
first
back.
part, the first part that I want to talk about is you said, because I think so many people put out there like, well, I don't have access to this, or I don't have contact with that, or I can't, I don't live in that area, or I don't have enough money to be able to do this. And you were willing to get the inspiration, feel the connection, have access to the books,
Yeah.
to what was written in those books, and
Yeah.
have that be an inspiration to you. And I really want the listeners to hear that, when you really are feeling like life is just beating you up, rolling you over, there is that ability to find an outlet. And
Yeah.
as you said, yours was a book. Today, it could be, podcasts. It could
Yeah.
be, the writings. It could be following, somebody and hearing their inspirational stories.
Yes.
That it's so important what you said, because one of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast so much and talk about people's journeys, to talk about their own relaunches, is to really hear how they made it through such tough relaunches of their lives, tough like transitions that are so just life altering, and
Yes.
how they transform. And so I have to say, you are such a beautiful example of exactly why I want to do this. There is a question I want to ask you,
Yeah.
is that, and I ask this not often, but I definitely do usually after the show. I'm going to throw it out there. With all that you've already shared with us, would you go back and change anything at this point?
No. No.
That's always what I
No.
hear.
No.
Help me understand, because people might be like,
Yeah.
what? You would still want to be, raped
No.
when you
I
were
wouldn't
3?
I wouldn't want to be, but I would allow it.
Mm,
Right? It's not about a wanting, right? It's not you want or you don't want, right? Because life is never this or that, right? It's not all or nothing. There's a whole lot of gray area in between there. And I wouldn't say that I would want to be raped, right? But I go back and I understand when I'm in people's homes, that's their life. Our life is reflected. Our beliefs about ourselves are reflected in our homes, right? So I walk into people's homes, whether they, whether we're, renovating or designing a brand new like renovate addition. Like right now, I'm working on a $2 million addition to a house. It's a 6,000 square foot, 1 bedroom addition. Or we're talking about somebody who we're just working on one room, right? When I walk into their front door, that's their home. That's their safety. That's their peace, right? And I know how precious that is, especially when you don't have it. And so to know that, for my clients to know that it doesn't matter what your story is safe with me. And there's no judgment here. And we're gonna create your home as a vision board for your life. Whatever that next level is for you, that next stage, whatever that is, that's what we're creating, the stage from which you're going to tell the next chapter of the story of your life. And your story is safe with me, right? I know that
Shannon,
that's true.
that's incredible. that
Yeah,
you are literally going in there and helping them create their stage, no matter what
no
is
matter
happening
what.
in life.
Right, because and they know that their story is safe with me because I think people intrinsically can tell. It's not like they necessarily know my story before I walk into their front door. I mean, now people do because it's like available. I've written about it in different interviews, right? Not in its entirety, but at least in part. So it'll get to the place where perhaps more and more clients will know my story. But many of my clients, they didn't know a thing about me personally necessarily before I walked into their front door, but they can tell that they're safe with me, right? They can feel it, they know it. There's no judgment here. And so when you're helping people to change their life, whatever that means, right? Whatever up leveling for them means, whatever that relaunch is for them, right? Whether they're coming from a place of trauma or a place of success, it's still their home. It's still something that needs to be honored and cared for. And I understand that in a way that I think, you know, I wouldn't want to change any part of that. I don't want to change any part of that. My ability to truly and authentically connect with people and their story and to understand what it is to be human.
So Shana, you talk about life design, and now I think everyone's like the bells going off, right? We
Yeah.
understand that your passion is around design, interior design,
Yeah.
but talk to me about life design because I
Yeah.
think that you have, I mean, just that's powerful,
Yeah.
creating your life design.
Yeah. It starts with, and again, this doesn't apply to every client. Some clients I'm going in and we're just designing their home really beautifully and it's really simple, and they already are clear on the story they want their life to tell. And other people, they're not so clear, and perhaps they're a little stuck, and maybe they're not using that language, right? But they're like, this is my life. And I don't know that it's going to change. I don't know how to change it. I don't know if I want to change it. And they haven't necessarily found the language around understanding that our life is a series of choices, right? That small choices that are stacked on top of each other, the clothing we wear, the scent in our home, right? So here's a thing that a lot of people don't know is that scent is our strongest connection to memory and to emotion and triggering emotion, right? And so with one particular smell, like think about your grandma's house, right? One particular smell, even thinking about it triggers a whole wave of emotion and memory about your grandma's house, right? So when we can associate specific smells with our home, with a particular room in our home, even the place that we meditate, we can with scent start to create memories of a space of a feeling of, and start to trigger that for ourselves at different moments in our life, right? And so we can start to bring ourselves back to a place of, okay, oh my gosh, orange blossom. Okay, I smell that. I'm going to breathe deep, and I'm going to know that I am cared for, that I am safe. Or lavender, I know this is a moment for me to relax, to take a deep breath, right? Like we can trigger different things, and by understanding that our life is meant to be a multisensory experience, and it's all a series of choices for us to make, and we don't necessarily make them so consciously because we're bombarded with information all day long and we're so exhausted. So by deciding the story, that by sitting down with clients and kind of creating and getting them to give language to the story they want their life to tell, now we can design your home or your office or your restaurant or whatever it is to reflect that story. And now we can start to build on that story through all of our senses, right? And even create a spiritual aspect to create that energy that we want that space to possess, and really feel into our life with all of our senses, and be really, really intentional about it.
Shana, that was powerful in the sense that most of us are looking at the space.
Hmm.
We are looking and seeing. We're not thinking about like the smell of it.
Yeah.
And you've hit on something. Even when you said that, I immediately went back to my grandma's,
Yeah.
my dad's mom's house, and we would go in there, and she was a concert pianist, and there was this big
Oh,
piano, but there always was this smell, and it was like, and I hate to say it now that I think about it, it was kind of like a smell of mothballs because, in those
yes.
days they
We
cut.
always remember the stinky smells
Yeah,
are what actually connects to us the most.
Yeah, and it was like, you know how they covered furniture and they,
Mhm.
we want to keep it nice. And so the mothballs in the closets and, we don't want any moths to eat our
Uh-huh.
clothes. And so that just came back to me. And then I thought, well, wait a
Yeah.
second. My mom passed away a couple years ago.
Mhm.
What would the smell of my mom be? And I started to think
Yes.
about it. And every time I smell a pecan pie,
Mm.
I think about my mom. And it does, it creates.
Yes.
And so then I started thinking people walk into my office and I have a diffuser and I put, depending on what mood I'm in the morning, I put oils in there and it invigorates me. So I actually
Yes.
come into my office and it now has a certain smell to it. I love the idea that you're sharing with people. It's something I do, but I didn't even
You
know
didn't even know.
I didn't
Exactly.
even know it. And I love
Yeah.
that it's as important. You go to the Gramercy Hotel in New York,
Yes. They
and
have a tailored custom smell that they filter into the HVAC system.
it
Yes.
smells absolutely
Amazing.
incredible.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that is just
Yeah.
like if I could just
Yeah.
have that in my whole house, I would love it. It just
Yeah.
smells
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
I love that you do that. So going back to life design,
Yeah.
I want you to, when people are starting to think about their, because you are currently doing interior design, is this everywhere? Is
Yeah.
this locally? Is what do
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. So, I'm on the East Coast and I've worked with clients in California, in Texas, in Florida, all over the place. I can work with clients virtually. I prefer to work in person, but sometimes it just works out to do it virtually. So yeah, I work with clients all over the country, all over the world. And, for life design, that doesn't necessarily have to be done in person, right? Again, my love language is quality time. So I love being face to face with someone, right? It's like my jam. It's my favorite thing. I love being just elbow deep in the moment.
Mm.
But that's not always possible. So sometimes it needs to be done via Zoom. But to be able to like life design work, that can be done mostly virtually. Again, like although I prefer to do it in person, but interior design, again, that some of that can be done virtually, some of it can be done in person. And so, yeah, we're working with clients all around the country, all around the world, and really just bringing this understanding of like, how can we be more intentional about our lives? How can we design our lives? And how can we give language to the story that we want our life to tell, and again, that can be done. We could be flexible. We do it, we figure it out, right? Each project is different and we just figure out what's going to work. What's that blend of in person and virtual?
You know what I also think is super important is we recently moved from California, house I
Mm.
had for 25 years.
Ooh, that's a big move.
It was a big,
Yeah.
and I
Ooh.
built the house
Oh,
too.
that's an even bigger move.
So we came to Colorado and it was interesting. I decided to not really use any, well, maybe 25%. I shouldn't say
Mhm.
none, but I really wanted this fresh canvas. I wanted
Yeah.
a new approach. I wanted to be reflective of me now,
Now. Yes.
not of who I was when I was, 27 years old. And,
Yes. Yeah.
so I'm now, I enter the space and it's so reflective of me. So how do you help people right now start with, I'm not, let's just say I'm not moving right now. I'm in my house. I've got some things. I've got, furniture that we've had for a long time. I've got things that I don't want to get rid of, but I want to update my
Mm.
space to make it more of who I am now. What do
Yeah.
you suggest?
Um, what we typically do is kind of look at and like talk through each and every piece, right? Like each of the pieces that's in someone's home. We are going to look at all of it, right? Whether we're doing it via Zoom or we're doing it in real life. It's easier in real life, but it can be done pretty easily on Zoom. It's just a matter of like negotiating the camera back and forth on your phone. But we're looking at each piece and we're talking about it, right? First, we've got to understand, what is this new chapter? What do you want it to be? What's the goal of it? Right? Where are we going with it? Or where do you want it to go? I don't want to know every single detail. I just want to know what's the end goal here, right? And And so then we get to say, okay, does this piece fit in with that goal? Does this piece fit in with that goal? Okay, so this one we're going to sell, this one we're going to keep, this one we might paint, right? And we're going to reorganize the furniture. We're going to reset that stage. We're going to reset to act two, right? Think about in a play, and there's multiple different acts, different portions of that set might remain, but large portions are going to be changed out. And we can do the same thing in our homes. We can keep pieces that really are meaningful and stick with us and reflect who we are at our core, no matter what age we are, or at least for the moment, right? They still appeal to us. And then we can bring in some new and fresh things, or we can add a coat of paint or some new hardware, or reupholster something, get a couple of new throw pillows. It's all about, what does it look like to give it new life? We don't necessarily have to get rid of everything, but maybe we do, or maybe it's a blend, and we don't know what that blend is until we figure it out. And in one room, we might keep all of your existing stuff, and in the next room, we might get all new stuff, right? It just depends on what is the purpose of that space. What is it we need to accomplish? I say this to people pretty often. There are no rules in your house. There are laws, right? But there are no rules. There are no rules. So what that room that people call a dining room, or that room that people call a living room, or whatever it is, whatever that best room in the house is, right? Gets the best light, gets the best breezes. That should be the room that we set up to do the thing we spend the most time doing besides sleeping, right? Because we do the most of
Yes,
sleeping.
yes, yes.
Right.
And
So
another thing I'm going to add
yeah.
is, when people come into my house, I live in a contemporary mountain house. Okay. Boulder, Colorado. But here's the
Yes.
thing. In my house, you don't see in every single room that it is contemporary mountain furniture. What I've done is, my past house was definitely antique. I loved just the old and bringing it in, but now I've mixed old, new.
Yes.
It's so
Yes. And there's a
it's
way to
me.
do that. Yeah. And there's a
But
way to do that.
it reflects
Yeah.
myself, it reflects
Yeah.
my husband, E. It's us. So people will come in the
Yes.
house and they'll be like, "I never would have thought those two things
Would go
would go
together.
together."
Yes, exactly. And there's a way to find the way that things connect, right? It's just like people. Two people may look like they have nothing in common, but there's always something. There's always some way to connect them, right? And so it's a matter of finding the way that things are meant to connect and how they're meant to connect, and finding that beautiful blend of things. It can be done, just a matter of really being intentional about it, and finding that thing that connects everything together and really making it blend well.
I also think you can, sometimes it's fun to throw in a trendy piece. I really, I have these
Yeah.
big, gigantic, furry pillows on my bed. I love them. It
Yeah.
kind of has
Yeah.
like a throwback to the 70s, and people are
Yeah.
like, are those still in? I'm like,
Are you
doesn't
brushing that? How do you
yeah,
wash it? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It looks like a big opaca, one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so I do like that. But
Yeah.
as we, and I could talk to you all day. I think
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
fabulous. But as we're wrapping up here, I do want to ask you this, because I'm sure everyone's like, "Hillary, ask the question, ask the question, ask the question." And the question is this, although it is morphing, everyone, so don't be upset. But I'm starting to ask, what is the favorite product that you like to recommend? I used to just do beauty products. Now I'm doing favorite products.
Yeah.
And what would that be to you right now?
For me, I'm going to answer this a little slightly differently. I wouldn't say necessarily one particular product, as much as I would say a behavior around a product, right? And what I want to say is that I think it's really important that we teach our young people to moisturize from the time that they're young, right?
Yes.
Simple moisturizer. For those of you who are watching, I'm 37. I
She
don't have
looks
any
like she's 21.
wrinkles,
She looks like
right?
she's 21, everyone.
I don't have any
Yeah.
wrinkles. I've never had any plastic surgery, no fillers, no Botox, no
I
nothing.
look like I
Okay.
could be her grandmother.
Oh, please. You do not. You are stunning.
Trust me. Trust
Stunning.
me. Look at the video. She looks great.
So So I started moisturizing, teaching myself to moisturize when I was 12, right? And because of that, I was able to prevent the wrinkles from happening. Hear that? We prevented the wrinkles from happening, so then we don't have to correct the wrinkles, right? So if we're using sunscreen and we're moisturizing, washing our face in the morning, or washing our face at night and rinsing it up in the morning and applying a moisturizer twice a day, then the wrinkles don't come. They stay off way longer. So my recommendation is just simple moisturizer. It doesn't have to be expensive or complicated, just moisturizing routine. That's my tip.
So I was doing the opposite. I was putting, what was that zit cream all over my face to dry the heck out of it because, I didn't want to wake up with a zit in the morning. So I just figured, let's just dry the heck out of the skin and then you won't get any.
Yeah.
I mean, so I love that.
That was a thing back in the day,
Oh
Noxzema
my God.
and all that.
Yeah, but it wasn't just Noxzema. It was, what was that stuff? And then you could get it tinted and you could put, and I just thought, well, if you just put it on one, why not just put it all over your face? So I'd wake up and my face, I'd already look like I'm like 30. And
yeah.
I'm like,
well, I mean, they make stuff for that now. Good Genes. Are you familiar with Sunday Riley's products? Good Genes. So Good Genes.
Oh, Sunday Riley, I've heard of.
Sunday Riley. Yeah. So Good Genes is brilliant. It's a salicylic acid that you can just put on any blemishes and they're like gone in the morning. It's like,
so that is for our period pimples, ladies.
Yes, 100%. I have one on my cheek and I just used a little bit of it tonight. So I'm going to wake up in the morning. It's going to be gone.
That's a good one. So we might have to, we'll put a couple of these, like, let's make sure we're doing this, make sure. What is your favorite moisturizer right now?
Oh, okay. So I use Fresh. I love Fresh's, the green, no, it's not green tea. It's black tea, the night, like, I forget the exact name of it, but everyone knows it's the brown container from Fresh. I love that. And then I use, Dr. Oleg's, the vitamin C, vitamin C, Oleg. It's a really long last name.
We're going to put all of these
we're going to put it all in there in the show notes. Yeah.
We got it. We got
show notes.
We got everyone covered out there.
It's a vitamin C treatment, or like just a light daily, like vitamin C moisturizer. And it's I have eczema, so I have to keep it really light during the day because when I sweat, it'll start to be an issue. So I just use a nice, like, light vitamin C moisturizer in the morning, and I keep it like really moisturized, the fresh black tea to really seal in all the moisture overnight.
Well, I love that because let me tell you, in Boulder, it is as dry as
dry.
I literally have my humidifier next to my bed, like blowing in my face while I sleep.
I do the same thing, and I'm on the East Coast, like especially in the winter with the heat blowing. I keep it on. I keep my humidifier on, and I'll wake up in the morning. I'm like, oh, thank God I did that. Otherwise you wake up and you're like, I have no lip skin anymore. Yeah. I don't know what's happening.
So true. All right. Well, Shana, how can people get in touch with you? Where do you want them to find you so that they can do life design? If they have an interior design project, where do they find you?
Yeah. So on my website, it is consonate.world. Again, that's going to be in the show notes because consonate is a real word, but it's a defunct word. So people won't necessarily familiar with it. My contact information is in there. And then previous projects we've been working on, my information as a speaker is in there. All the good stuff is in there. My life story is in there. So it's a really great place just to get connected with who we are as a company, and then who I am as a person, and reach out.
And who you are as a person is just incredible. So what a pleasure it's been for me this last 30, 40 minutes. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you again for being on the show. And I look forward to continuing our friendship and see where we can take this next journey. So thank you again. And
thank you.
Everyone, check out the show notes. There's a lot of goodness there too. And we will see you next time on the Silver Lined Relaunch. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Silver Lined Relaunch. If I said something today that resonated with you, will you please head over to iTunes right now and leave us a 5-star review and share this episode with others and help them find the silver linings as well. And don't forget, you can have immediate access to the show notes, any giveaways, and the links to those amazing beauty products at therelaunchco.com/podcast. Until next time, there's always a silver lining, and now is the time to hit the reset button to relaunch those transitions into transformations.